All right. Welcome, everybody, back to another Microsoft Unboxed podcast. This is episode 18. I'm your host today, Kareem Anderson. I'm joined with.
David Allen, happy Friday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well out there.
Yeah, we're back. We missed last week. We had some technical difficulties, but we are back. We will also cover a couple of the stories from last week that kind of were big news in case you wanted to hear our insights on what happened last week. But we also have a full week this week. It's worth of news. So I'm going to run over some of the headlines real quick just to get you caught up on what we're going to be talking about in case you want to stay with us for the entire show, or maybe you just want to find sections or headlines that you were more interested in and jump straight to those. We're going to be talking about Microsoft puts its final discount on the Xbox 360 store. So, for those of you who are nostalgic for the old days of gaming, we'll go into that. There we go. David's got his hand up. We're also be talking about Xbox bringing in a new controller for accessibility, and this one is by far the most interesting looking, perhaps
It's neat
intuitive.
looking. I think it's
Yeah,
very versatile too.
picture a Rubik's cube, and we'll get into more details. Microsoft is also um, gave out a sustainability report, and it looks like AI is going to be a problem going forward for some of those environmental pledges that they made back in 2020. We'll get into details of that. Microsoft's also launching a mobile store, or plan to launch a mobile store July this year in July. So we'll see how quickly they can get that up and going and how successful that might be, and maybe we'll have some predictions on that. Wisconsin is getting a $3.3 billion investment from Microsoft. Microsoft's just chugging out the money. The credit card and the wallets are open. We'll get into details about that and how that kind of pertains to both the Biden and Trump administration. It's a little political. Uh, Microsoft also fails to avoid EU antitrust investigations, and this is over Teams, and we'll talk about the history on that and how Microsoft still has time to kind of sidestep a potential investigation, but it is that time is closing very quickly. We'll also be talking about Google, which put AI into everything during its I/O 2024 conference, and we'll get into details of some of that and how it kind of will compare with Microsoft's event next week and what Apple will do, I think, in June. Last week, we're talking about PS5 shipments, which dwarf Xbox, and why that may or may not be a problem for Microsoft going forward. And then we'll be talking, like I said, last week's big announcement was Microsoft shutting down a bunch of studios. We'll briefly cover that. It's depressing, but we'll have to talk about it nonetheless. And then we will get into our speculations for Microsoft Build, the super secret Surface event on Monday, and where we stand on all of that. So, with that being said, let's get through it. Let's see if we can be as expeditious as possible. What's our first story?
Well, we're going to jump right in, folks. If you're an old gamer like myself, notice I did not say I'm an old guy, just an old gamer. Um, the Xbox 360 store that opened roughly 18 years ago when the Xbox 360 was introduced and started this wonderful thing we call Xbox and got us all online and got us all connected. And, you know, unfortunately, it's time to put the old Xbox 360 into, I don't want to say the pasture, but we're kind of going to phase her out for a little bit. We now have the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, as you know, with all those pixels and frame rates. So, with that being said, Microsoft has said we're going to give you one more shot to get your favorite Xbox 360 titles. And what they're doing, they're going to close that down on July 29th of 2024. So, what that means is you won't be able to download any Xbox 360 content from the Xbox Marketplace online. Now, Microsoft was very clear, and I want to make sure I'm very clear for our listeners and our watchers. This does not impact any old titles that you may buy from your local store, your local GameStop on a disc. You can still put those discs in if you have a older Xbox that has the disc. I think the new Series X does take the disc. I believe I've got a Series S. Um, but what that means is you won't be able to buy from the marketplace, and it does not impact being able to play your existing content. clear about that at the bottom of their release. So I wanted to make sure that that got out to you guys. So the first list of discounts has already started. I have noticed discounts already on my Xbox. For example, Splinter Cell was very popular during the 360 days. It's down to less than $20. There'll be another discount on, let's see, I've got the date right here, the 18th of June, and there'll be another one that comes in the middle of July, and all of these discounts are going to run through the closing of the store on July 29th, 2024. So if you've got your favorite Xbox 360 stuff out there, maybe it's not bought yet, now is the time. You might have a hard time finding it unless you find it with a physical media or physical disc.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're doing this. Unfortunately, I Chrissy known my Xbox 360 a little while back. If for those of you who know what that reference is, you know. So mine's is gone, but I am glad that they are at least giving people a final chance to get those games and get that experience or bring that experience into more modern times. We're going to move on to our next story, which is Xbox is bringing a new controller for disabled gamers this fall. This is a story that you wrote up, so let's give us some of the details on that one.
Let's see. I have lost my headline, my friend.
It's all good. I'm going to throw up for those of you who are listening a picture of what we have. This is just a simple version of this controller.
Yes.
Like I said, picture a Rubik's cube with buttons instead of the stickers. That's what this thing looks like. It is a cubed version of a controller all the way around that has buttons on the top, buttons on the sides, bumpers or whatnot. It's interesting. I think in your headline you discussed that uh, it's again this is for gamers who have accessibility needs, or perhaps people who might just find this version of gaming a little more intuitive. Who knows? But according to the story that you wrote, there are about 450 million disabled gamers worldwide, which is a much larger number than I was privy to. I am ignorant in that aspect. But the accessibility is always an ongoing journey at Microsoft, and they're committed to making gaming both welcoming and inclusive, as I think you've expressed. The controller can be pre-ordered, I believe, starting now. Like I said, I think your headline says it's going to be available this fall, so you're going to have a little bit of time to wait for it. But the other part of this, because of its accessibility, these are snap and play parts that you can connect together in various designs. So if there are things that aren't working for you with the pre-built version of this thing when it comes out of the box, you can put it together in different ways. And this is kind of mimicking or echoing the same thing that they did for their Microsoft designed by Microsoft accessibility products, where things that had certain nubs or different touch types or whatever can be paired or disassembled and repositioned in other versions of their accessibility hardware. So I believe this is probably the first step. Normally they do it this way so that when you can unsnap certain sections when they have new designs for accessibility needs that come about, and you can add those new designs later. So this should be extensive for quite a bit going forward. I think the updates for some of the games specifically, I think you mentioned in this headline, or so that people who are interested in playing Candy Crush, Saga, or Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 or Diablo 4 we'll be able to use this controller across all that wide span of types of gameplays. With that being said, what are you thinking as far as this?
I think this is a big deal. I'm sorry, folks. We use OneNote to keep track of our show notes, and OneNote had a moment. I lost the headline there for a second. I think this is a big deal. This is something Microsoft started. Let's see, when we were working on another website, roughly 2021, 2022, they came out with this, accessibility initiative. They have an accessibility lab. They developed an accessibility framework for game developers to be able to add this to their games. And from knowing people that are disabled, I don't think game developers really understand how big this is. There has always been an inclusive issue with gaming. So I'm going to be one of those that stands in Microsoft's corner on this, that waves the flag, and I'm even going to give the game developers, Activision, and specifically here that are picking up these titles. Like for example, we've got a picture on the website where you can use this controller to adjust your dead zones in Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty, I'm bringing this up because it's a AAA game, as we all know. To make a AAA game accessible is a big deal, because I know there's a lot of disabled people out there in years past that have seen these games and have seen these advertisements and have said something to me personally. I wish I could play. And until you've been put in that situation, that's hard. I mean, it really is. So thank you, Microsoft. Thank you to all the third-party game developers out there that are picking these frameworks up and including their games and making them accessible. I would love to see, and this is not a knock against Sony, Nintendo, or anybody, but I would love to see Sony and Nintendo come up and say, yes, we're doing the same thing. We're going to make our stuff more accessible, because I'm going to use a version of what Phil Spencer has always said: gaming for everybody, gaming everywhere. And I would love to see everybody get involved in this.
Hopefully, everyone that's involved in gaming just heard that passionate plea. We're going to leave it at that because that was beautifully said. And we're going to move on to our next headline, which is Microsoft's AI ambitions at significant odds with its climate change pledges. That basically is some bad news overall. According to the company's latest sustainability report, Microsoft's pursuit of injecting most of its services and in products with AI is significantly increasing its carbon footprint. So it's working backwards from some of these pledges that they've made over the past year. Despite several environmental pledges to reduce its carbon footprint by reaching carbon neutrality, or they pledge to reach carbon neutrality, net neutrality by 2030, its recent AI endeavors will not only setting Microsoft's carbon negative footprint back, but it's adding it could be a substantial threat going forward because it is producing much more carbon emissions than I think they had planned for. Again, the 2020, and this is Microsoft's own environmental sustainability report. So who knows how much they tried to whitewash over this? I'm sure an independent report might dig up even more, but at least the transparency that they've given us so far shows that their carbon emissions have increased by 30% over the last year since they've been kind of pushing AI or whatnot, and the AI resources have contributed to that growth. Earlier this month, Microsoft had announced that it was had a new $17 billion investment in renewable energy purchases with the Brookfield Asset Management company, which is tasked to give them 10.5 gigawatts of renewable energy for the company. But that is in stark contrast to the 15.357 million metric tons of carbon dioxide that the company spewed out as just a business in general across all of its different businesses. So while renewable energy will go a long way into giving these AI models something to feed on, they'll find a way to kind of power these things. The bigger question comes at the imbalance that the carbon emissions are creating as a result, because these things need to be cooled. They run really hot, and then as a result, these are the carbon emissions that we're getting. Microsoft did partner with a company, I believe, an LA-based startup called Carbon Capture. Very basic, does what it says, where they plan to capture this carbon before it gets into the atmosphere and then bury it underground. I don't know what the capacity is for that, especially in LA with Microsoft and what it's currently producing. But I just want to know, we try and cover all of Microsoft, and these are probably some of the headlines you may miss during the week. What are your thoughts on AI potentially not only setting back its projected outcomes of maybe 2030 being carbon neutral, but perhaps extending it to being, carbon positive, which is in the wrong direction?
Well, I saw something yesterday. It was a YouTube video, and I cannot remember off the top of my head who produced it, but they were talking about how the number of NVIDIA GPUs, and just so for folks out there that don't know, GPUs are being used to process a lot of this AI. They were talking about the heat produced, the power used. That's kind of where all these carbon numbers come from. So what crossed my mind was for three things: Axion, the Microsoft Surface chip that was discussed earlier this year in the data center. And we know that Apple has said that they are talking about bringing the M series CPUs to their data centers to process some of this AI. So, right now, the numbers going in the wrong direction are concerning because what have we done over the past year, year and a half? AI, throw resources at it, forget about power usage, forget about emissions, forget about computing power, just keep throwing resources at it. So now, in order to keep those carbon goals down and a clean environment for everybody and a clean environment for Kareem's kids and our grandkids, we've got to find a way to be more efficient. And I think maybe using these M series chips, using some of these Qualcomm chips, using the Google Axion chips. Maybe this is what we need to do and start shifting some of these workloads to some of these more efficient chips and maybe then seeing where our emissions and carbon numbers stand because we have absolutely blown where we were supposed to be when this AI thing came along because all we have done is throw resources and throw power at AI, AI fast, AI now, more, 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 as you're going to talk about later in the pod here about what was Google's I/O conference about? AI. That's it. So I think it kind of plays into the fact of, that's what we've done. Now we've got to fix it.
Yeah, to that point, Microsoft does have a plan to offer a handful of future-leaning solutions, such as planning to build more efficient data centers with servers and to transition their current servers into more low-powered states, and figure out a way to reduce peak power consumption overall across all of these server or these data centers. Another solution is posited by Microsoft that includes infrastructure decarbonization. Uh, there's innovations in low carbon concrete that they plan on using uh, to build a lot of this stuff out. So again, from the very fundamental built construction of these data centers and areas, they're looking to make those kind of granular efficiencies. They're improving measurements across its supply chain, partnering with businesses that are more transparent about their emissions. So, uh, if they're working with somebody that's spewing a lot more emissions, maybe they can figure out a way to counterbalance that to continue the partnership, or they move and find someone else who is doing less harm to the environment. They're going to be reducing emissions in cloud logistics, purchasing carbon-free electricity, and measuring semiconductor emissions, among other things that they listed in this sustainability report. I suggest, for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing, the full report is in my write-up if you want to go see all the details about it. I just pulled this section because I thought this is the easiest way to kind of throw up a red flag about our use of AI, and we're not even in the baby steps of that right now. We're still trying to figure out what it's going to be used for. So imagine once it kicks in and we do figure out a solution for this, and more people start using it, how Microsoft and all these other companies are going to balance that. But I'm not going to belabor the point. Again, we have a lot to get to. So let's get to our next headline, which is Microsoft is set to launch a mobile store. I think you wrote about this coming in July.
Yes,
Just some details on that.
this is something we had last week, and it kind of, the reason I'm bringing it up this week it surprised me in the way that Microsoft presented this. We had talked about on a couple of previous podcasts. Microsoft wanted a mobile store. Microsoft was going to build a mobile store. Microsoft was going to work with their partners to build this mobile store. They've talked about it for a year, and last week Microsoft just Sarah Bond just came out and said, "Hey, mobile store, July." So it's not like hey, it's coming this fall. It's coming the end of the summer. You're like, okay, it's coming in July. They're taking an interesting stance with it. I don't know how I feel about this. It's a web version only store for now, with Microsoft saying if it's a web version, it's accessible to everybody. I get that. Totally 100%. Web version accessible to everybody. I'm kind of wondering where the app is though. That's kind of got me wondering. I think maybe there should be an app out there to access the store in some way. The pros of this store so far is that Microsoft brings up that Apple and Google, as we know, takes usually anywhere between 20 and 30% of the purchase for their fees. Microsoft is claiming their fees will be quite a bit lower. And as we mentioned, they wanted to bring up it will be not be related to any specific ecosystem. We also know that as of right now, it's just for Microsoft and Microsoft products. Your PC games, your Xbox games, and with the hopes of opening this store later to partners and other publishers. So the Microsoft store is coming, and or the Microsoft mobile store, excuse me, I said that incorrectly. The Microsoft mobile store is coming couple months. What are your thoughts on this? I think it's a good idea, but it's going to have to be open to other publishers to succeed, I think.
Yeah, I think this is part of the reason why they're building a web version only. Because if they bring it to um, iOS or the Android store, stuff like that, part of the way they get around that is because it is a website that can uh, basically redirect people to it without anybody getting taxed the extra fees. It's the fastest way to get the store out there without having to create three different dedicated apps that have possibly different feature sets. I think what they're going to do is continue to build this web version as the foundation. And then when they get enough developers or they have enough interest in the store itself, start adding specific operating system related things, which will in turn create its own app essentially. So I think they're making the web first just to get it out there, make it more accessible, make it more extensible. They can add features to it themselves. They don't need to rely on developers to do it for them, or even consolidate or talk to the other operating systems, which they've proven in the past have been difficult and been barriers to uh, getting things developed quickly and in a timely manner. So I think this is good. I'll be interested to see how this interoperates with their current Xbox Game Pass offering on the web as well. Like, for those of us who are Xbox fans, what the difference this really is, how they plan to make it only a mobile store versus like just a web browser via your mobile device. Uh, Again, good first steps. I don't expect this to be anything huge. I think once they get their feet underneath them by next year, we'll start to get more information about uh, you know uh, games that can only be specifically gotten from this mobile store. The list of first party exclusives, indie developers, things like that. Right now, they're just kind of placing the chess pieces on the board.
Well, I think this is the right place to do it. Can I go off the script? I'm gonna just throw this question out there. Maybe some of our users will comment on it. While we're building a store, we're building AI. When do we start seeing all three come together? AI and gaming. We've put it everywhere else. We're building the store. Would now be the time to throw that out there too?
Yeah, I couldn't be in more agreement with you on this, and I think There were discussions. I think we talked about this a few weeks back internally about how Satya Nadella wants to add AI into the Xbox division specifically. So I'm sure he's already hounded Phil Spencer about this, and Phil Spencer's had to go out to his people to figure out the best place, the most accurate place to put these kind of things in gaming. I think there were mentions about wanting to have tutorials and kind of prompt suggestions that bring up uh, uh, specific instances if you're having trouble in a specific level or something like that, where it will give you, hey, these gamers on YouTube have been in the same situation. Would you like to watch this while you're also in the same spot, and you can walk yourself through it, things like that. I think as of right now, though, I think since we last reported, the only version of AI that they're adding to Xbox is that customer service part. But I do see
Yeah, I've seen
more and
that.
more use cases coming.
Right.
With that being said, oh, go ahead. You want to put
I
last?
I want to, and the only reason I bring this up is I had a little more time this week in the evening to play Xbox than normal, and I was kind of just browsing through the dashboard, kind of reminiscing a little bit on the Xbox 360 and how far we had come. And I played NBA 2K24. Then I gave Madden 24 a play. Then for the sports fanatics out there, college football 25 is coming back in July. It's going to be the first time in over 20 years, or 10 years, excuse me, 10 years, that EA has produced a college football game. Now, that's a whole other story in itself. But what we've always seen with some of these sports games was, it's not realistic enough. If you're an NBA fan, since they're in the playoffs right now, that's not what this athlete would do. That's not what that athlete would do. So when do we start seeing? And it kind of made me quiver just to think about how real this could get. When do we start seeing AI into our realistic titles, such as NBA, the WWE, the wrestling games that are out there, where what you're seeing on screen is even more realistic in actions and what because of AI and what that's able to bring. I thought, I just kind of sat here at my desk and thought about that for a minute. How realistic are games going to get in the next 5 years?
It's going to be, I mean, it's always to this point how well these models are trained. So it's going to be a minute unless developers have had access to AI that we haven't known about and they've been working for the past few years. I think to your point though, I think that they'd have to get trained on users' movements over they'd have to pull from the internet, pull from its databases in the NBA statistics and things like that to make an amalgamation, to make a pre-generative model of that player, of that audience, of this time of weather, of this time of day, this type of weather, the outcomes of these kind of things, to put it all into the game. Again, fortunately, there are companies like Microsoft, Google, Apple, stuff like that are gathering all this information. Now developers will be able to just point to one cloud and be like, all right, give me the information from OneDrive or Azure that has this database on all the Detroit games in November. Detroit plays in a dome. New York games in the winter, and the likelihood of the weather, being 14 degrees outside and what that entails and all that kind of stuff to then put it into the game. These models are being, this data is being grabbed up by all of these companies. So it just takes the time. It takes gaming developers to create the prompts and the models that they need for that information to pour into. So maybe not years, maybe the next couple of years we'll start to see that. Maybe Grand Theft Auto is going to be one of those first games that starts to use that kind of thing next year.
They this didn't make a complete headline on our site, but in the financial report this week, they kind of somewhat narrowed down the game as fall of 2025 for the new Grand Theft Auto. That kind of made its way in the gaming circles yesterday. So maybe we're getting closer to the new Grand Theft Auto. They were very quick to mention, though, the current Grand Theft Auto is still selling like gangbusters.
It is. It is very much so. So who knows? Maybe they'll run alongside each other or merge some cool new way, and you'll just take your character right over to the next one. With that being said, we're going to move on to our next headline, which is Wisconsin getting $3.3 billion investment with the help of Microsoft. Do you want to talk about it? I wrote about it. We can both cover it. You can run with it to start off with.
Well, I think this is a big deal, and I'm not going to get into the numbers necessarily and bore you with that type of information, but this is the same place in Wisconsin that I believe Foxconn agreed to build, and we're going to produce some mobile phone parts, and that deal fell through. So Microsoft jumped right in and said, "All right, we're going to build an AI based data center here." Now, that's really what got my attention because what Microsoft is wanting to do is they have a partnership with one of the colleges in Wisconsin. It is the University of Wisconsin Milwaukee will be the first type, and they will be training students to work in that data center with data center AI jobs. Right now, they're saying there could be upwards of 1,000 students change, trained to work there. And at first, you read that and go, well, David, that's not that big a deal. Yes, it's an economy boost. And yes, there'll be roughly 15,000 jobs added to the area. Yes, we had President Biden out there to help break ground on the facility a couple weeks ago. But, we're getting ready to talk about Google AI here. And I'm just going to make this statement and I'll save the rest of it. I think this is saying something from Microsoft's point of view. We've been coding. That's the word I'm going to use. We've been coding AI as hard as we could go now for the past 2 years. There's been plenty of articles out there. Saw one this week that some of the developers are facing burnout because they've been coding AI so hard. But now we're seeing the business side of AI, and Microsoft seems to be the first one making that business move, going, we believe AI is going to stick. So we're going to open the wallet. We're going to offer some jobs. We're going to work on some partnerships to keep building this AI thing. I think that's the first move to help cement whatever future AI is going to have. And I don't mean that sarcastically. We don't know the future of AI. We just know we're getting started. So, Microsoft is showing, hey, from a business point of view, we see that this can go places. Businesses, partnerships. It's a good day to be in technology. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, Microsoft plans to spend the 3.3 billion between now and the end of 2026 to build this data center. This, like you mentioned, was taken over by Foxconn, who was kind of just sitting on the land. This was also an opportunistic opportunity by the Biden administration, who really didn't have much to do with this. I believe Trump had more to do with Foxconn establishing the area back in 2021, 2020, I believe. And he had made a bunch of promises. Foxconn also did over the past 4 years. They've done nothing really. They've just kind of kept rebranding. I believe The Verge has done extensive coverage of this since it's announced, partly because the editor-in-chief, Nilay Patel, is from the area. So he's been hounding Foxconn about this. They've been kind of dodging him and whatnot. That's some of the backstory. But to your point, I believe this business aspect of it is partly going to be contributed to the revenue that Microsoft is going to have to show investors. They are now strategically and financially putting money behind this versus just the rhetoric and some of the like demos they've shown us. Because to this point, AI hasn't really produced enough revenue or enough justified itself. But when you start to concretely put stuff in places and you can attribute jobs and you can attribute the amount of money that can be attributed to the university training these people, you start to say, hey, this is AI. Well, not directly, me going to the Copilot button in Windows, but people who are getting jobs for this and people who are then or contributing backwards to AI. You can start to say, hey, that's revenue. That is AI paying for itself, technically speaking. So that's what a lot of these data centers are going to start doing is when people start to when they start to get deals on, hey, I want to use your cloud and I have the data center capacity to do it. That's revenue, even though AI specifically may not be what's powering it, a one for one. But the fact that that data center, which was, in the checkbook written as AI data center is now being used by a company for, whatever else they're doing it for. Microsoft can still kind of massage numbers, say, hey, that's an AI revenue. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of these data centers being put up just so they can start saying, hey, this was an AI data center. It's being used for yada, 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 but it's AI revenue. So investors, we're still, AI is, here to stay, and it's proving itself by these kind of metrics. That's what I believe. And that's just cynicism in myself. So uh, we'll leave it at that unless you have something you want to add to it.
No, I was just going to say, I think you're spot on there because I think at this point, anything to justify an AI expense, anything to write off an AI expense, we're going to start seeing these companies use because companies or consumers, and I use that term to mean that they're different. I look at consumers as you and I, or businesses as, a financial company. We're still justifying what AI is and we're still justifying its uses. And I think these companies are going to start looking for ways to write it off until these companies say, yes, Copilot, $30 a month. That is a part of our monthly budget. When we have these financial meetings in these companies, and there's that line on the budget for the company that says we're paying for Microsoft Copilot, this is what we're paying, and somebody that's a decision maker stands up and says, yes, we're going to make paying that AI bill a priority.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like I said, to that point, Microsoft and Google, which we'll talk about in a second, and Apple, which we'll also be talking about briefly, are going to need to probably relatively soon start answering some of the tougher questions. This is, we're kind of getting towards the end of the Netflix building era. I always compare that because Netflix or Amazon were able to just throw money and resources at a product or service saying like, hey, it will pay for itself. And investors went with it for a long time. I think Tesla's kind of in that same thing. But at some point, you're gonna, investors are gonna say, I need to see profit. I need to see direct revenue. I need to see that because just you saying like it will eventually do it is playing around with my money, and I don't want to do that. And I think we have another 6 months to a year before investors start saying, all right, AI, I need to see, show me the money is basically what they're going to say. So these solid investments are another way to kind of obfuscate that, buy themselves some time as well. With that being said, we're going to move on to our next headline, which is the EU coming after Microsoft once again.
Again,
We are, yeah, we are back, not back where we started, but sort of. This is a short story. Microsoft basically offered a bunch of unbundling solutions back last month or month before last, saying like, "Hey, I know you guys are interested in investigating us over the way we kind of bundle Teams into Office 365, and it's unfair and anti-competitive. So we're going to sell it as a separate product." Unfortunately, Brussels may be set to offer an official charge of antitrust. Could be as early as next week, if it's true. There were sources familiar with the story, and I believe who for source writing reporting about this might be Bloomberg, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it was.
Yeah, have spoken to people who were familiar with the matter. So again, this is he said, she said, she said, she said kind of situations. But the EU doesn't seem very happy with the solutions that Microsoft has offered just yet. And based on that, we could issue an official charge of antitrust. Now, regulators remain skeptical of the way Microsoft's offering its preferential treatment of Teams. I believe Slack, which is the main competitor that's brought this up in the EU to kind of get this whole ball going, says that Microsoft may, even though they've said that they're going to sell it separately, may impair the way third-party chat services work with Office in a preferential treatment for Teams. So just because Teams is sold separately doesn't mean that Teams doesn't just work better with Office 365 and deprecating the potential efficiencies with third parties like Slack or Zoom or things like that. So if Microsoft can't come up with a way to say, hey, we're going to make sure that Teams and Slack work exactly the same with Office 365, even though we make Teams, then they may be running into headfirst into an official charge. and those unbundling solutions again won't be enough. What are your thoughts on that?
This whole bundling thing bothers me. I'm gonna be honest. I get what the EU is trying to do, and I get, that they say if a company wants to buy this office, they should be able to buy this office without having to buy Teams, or whatever they choose is what the company should be allowed to do. But I have a very when I see stuff like this, I think from a consumer point of view, and I don't, to my detriment sometimes, don't always think about the business end of it. But take our company, for example. Take what we do for our website. We use Microsoft 365, correct? We like
Mhm.
their Outlook. We like using Word. We've got OneNote here fired up for our podcast. We're syncing our notes. We're doing what Microsoft wants us to do with these products. Okay, Kareem, I'm going to go get Slack for us to talk. Now, I get what the EU is trying to do, but I work with companies every day. You work with companies every day. I see the mindset of the decision maker. I see the mindset of the financial person. The financial person doesn't want to pay two bills, they want to pay one. The decision maker doesn't have to worry about Slack being down and Outlook being up. They either want one to be down or one to be up. They don't want to have the help desk sending in crazy tickets. My Slack is down, but my email works. Why? I get it, EU. I hear you. Back off, because most companies are going to buy that bundled solution because it's easy, simple, it's cohesive, and most of all, compatible.
Yeah, and to that point, I think that's again what Slack is concerned about, its compatibility effort. I think Microsoft could assuage a lot of these things. If I don't know how they can prove a future statement saying like, "Hey, we will make it compatible." Maybe they can show code or something like that. I have no idea, but there's still time for them to kind of get around this. I hope that they do. I appreciate the fact that they want to sell it separate. They want Microsoft to sell it separately. I think they should also be allowed to offer a bundle because, to your point, that is what a lot of people would like to see versus paying two separate bills for the exact same service or semi-service or whatnot. But I'm all for it. I think regulations are great for the most part. Uh, I do find this one in particular, exhausting.
Yes, that's
But
the word I was looking for. Exhausting. Thank you.
it is what it is. I am not a cheerleader for the company, so let's see what they can get out of it, and hopefully, it's for everyone's benefit, and we can see some of that brought back here into the states as well. Lastly, we're going to be, I mean, not lastly, but the next big thing we're going to be talking about, actually, and I'm trying to go through this as quickly as possible. I know we're getting down to the wire on this, is Google I/O. I watched all 2 hours of it. I don't
No,
know if
no,
you
no.
had a
Hold on.
chance to.
I need to correct you. Google AI. That Google AI 2024 should have been the name there. Sorry.
I,
Go
I
ahead.
agree with you. Very much so. Yeah, they really should have renamed it because they went all in. They went in hard this time around for AI. And again, Google is kind of known for AI, or at least for pre-generative assistance help for any things that they do. Many of things. Office. I mean, the Google Docs uses it. Machine learning. They're all the stuff that they add in Android for like the phone assist and text messaging stuff like that. So they've already kind of been doing it, but specifically for this year, they just went whole hog on AI. To you and I, as we were discussing during the event, to the detriment of all the other services they have. We didn't get anything mentioned in the keynote about Chrome OS or Android specifically, or Nest, or hardware, or their Google Cloud IoT, or workspaces. None of that stuff was really mentioned in specific, but AI was mentioned being placed in some of these things in specific areas. So let me go through that. I mean, first, before I go through the list of stuff, what were your thoughts on that and on the mentioning AI 121 times and it just being an AI thing? I believe online people were saying this is kind of a boring event because of it.
Well, even Mr. Durant mentioned. I enjoyed on his podcast yesterday. His one of his daily podcasts he does. He really harped on Google and he harped on Microsoft too about making these events more entertaining. That he understood that what's being discussed, and I felt the same way. That's why I bring this up. That he understood that we all have parts of these conferences that we are more interested in than others. And I agree. And he said there were parts where AI was mentioned and discussed where he felt like falling asleep. I agree. And it bothered me, as we talked about off mic, that none of the other products were brought up. No Chrome OS, which is a big deal. No Gmail. No Google Workspace. Now, I did see after the keynote that Gemini was put, and we talked about this before we went on air, that Gemini Pro has a 2 month trial as part of Google One. You get 2 terabytes of storage with it. That was not mentioned during the conference. That would have been a good thing to mention, Google. That would have been a good time to throw that out there and go, hey, Google One, here's a deal, 19.95 or 19.99 a month, 2 terabytes of storage and a 2 month trial. That would have been the place to put that out there. You know, we know that Google VPN is dying next month. So is AI all we care about? That kind of, I don't know. And I'm going to shut up, I promise. It bugs me that that's all we discussed.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you. To that point, Google will be putting AI officially into search. It's been over the last, I don't know, 7 months or so, playing around with Gemini in the search results, both on mobile and the desktop, where I think many of you will have noticed that in addition to the regular search page that you get, there's now a new section that will have a more contextualized answer to whatever question you have. And it's written kind of like in a natural language response versus just a listing of websites and links. It looks like that's going to be official, and it's going to change the way the UI is essentially drawn up going forward. I believe Liz Reed, which is the head of Google Search, said, "quote The implement." We've heard that users find search more helpful than ever. At this point, we've served billions of queries, and what we hear again and again is that people like this combination of insights. That's what they call it, AI insights. Is that section that you're now seeing, mixed with the ability to deeper dive to hear from human perspectives and different authoritative sources. So they're doing the good thing. They're doing the smart thing. They're slowly rolling it out. They're dipping people's toes in the water on this. So you still get your list of links and websites underneath this AI insights, but it's going to become more prominent both on mobile and desktop. The other thing we're going to be getting is Circle to Search, which is getting broader distribution. I know that I believe the Pixel lineups up to the 8E, I think it is, are getting Circle to Search in updates over the next month or so. The S20 Galaxy's S24 lineup got it back in January, I believe, when they first announced these. But the model is using a new Learn LM AI model to help kind of boost the way that you can kind of do more things with it. Circle search is going to be more useful for education purposes now. People are going to be able to take pictures of formulas, graphs, diagrams, things like that. Circle to search and get a listing of a walkthrough of certain problems or solutions to these kind of things. So again, it gets a little more helpful, and it's going to be on more Android devices. I believe they say they want to hit over, what is it, 200 million by the end of this year. They say it's on 100 million devices currently. So we'll see. They didn't give a list of what devices will get support of this, or if this is going to be kind of just a general Android update, or if you can go to the Play Store and get something to kind of enable it yourself. They didn't go into any of those details. But for those of you who were envious of the Pixel lineup and the Galaxy lineup, they should be coming at least to more devices by the end of the year. AI gets into video, which was huge. They spent, I want to say, like 20, 25 minutes on this. I was to your point, very bored on this section. But they had Donald Glover. He was very impressed with it. I think the new thing is called Sora, or no, Vio, which is a solution to Sora, which was OpenAI's text to video generation prompt solution. So I believe what is it? Dennis Hasbulis, which is the head of Google's AI and R&D lab, which is in DeepMind. They said we're exploring features like storyboarding and generating longer scenes to see what VO can do. So right now you can kind of go test this out at I believe you can just type in veo.com, I believe is the site. Or you can just type in Google AI video generator and it'll bring up where you can go to try to play with this. But you type in your natural language prompt and you will get a short video. I think it's somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds that's being created, but they're looking to do some really cool things with, at least with the demo that they were showing. As Demis mentioned, they are going to be looking for ways to make longer clips, probably minutes long. So for those of you who don't have the ability to animate yourselves, or you just need, you're in a writer's room, you're trying to, again, give more context to, maybe the joke that you have or the scene that you're writing up, these video prompts should help you with that going forward. Again, we don't know when this is going to be out. A lot of this stuff was coming soon from Google. They're also going to be beefing up their image generator, which the text to image prompt. They're going to be using a new model called Imagine, MAGNE model. And this is, again, the CEO of the co-founder of DeepMind, which is not the guy who is running Microsoft, but the other guy, was on stage talking about this. Again, it's going to have a longer prompt, so you can add more details to it, and we'll have a better understanding of the natural language models, and it just has a broader data set. So that is another thing that's going to be coming. They also had, I believe it was called Project IDX, which is in open beta. And this is a new, I believe, development studio that's all dedicated to just developing an AI. It's backed by Google's Cloud Run server, serverless platform, and it'll be better merged with the front end and back end services for people. I guess we'll have better support for Google Maps for those people in enterprise who need location-based information and data, or pull in information and data from location-based content. Janine Banks from the Google, she thinks she's Google's VP of General Managing Developer for Manager for Developer X, says, as AI becomes more prevalent, the complexities that come with developing all of that really becomes greater, and we want to help solve the challenges. That's why we built Project IDX, a multi-platform development experience that makes building applications faster and easier. Project IDX makes it really frictionless to get going with your preferred frameworks or language, with easy-to-use templates like Next.js, Astro, Flutter, Dart, Angular, Go, and more. I think Go is going to be the last thing they add. So for those of you who are Android or Google developers looking to do that, they want to put all the other development languages first because they have history, I suppose, and you can just take all the old code and start putting it into that before Go is added. Another thing, Gemini is getting added to Google Maps in a specific way, where I believe developers who want to tap into Google Maps for, I want to say, what is it called? Like summaries. They will no longer need to write their own summaries in their apps. They can just tap into the vast amount of summaries and recommendations that Google Maps has. And with this new API, they'll be able to pull that information from Google Maps into their own app and have a pre-generated summary kind of posted. And the cool thing about that is that it will be a live one, so that it changes as the time and dates of searches are done. So if, say a place has 4 stars 6 months ago and now is, falling off to the wayside, that description will change, say, as, gets more information about, as, people are saying, hey, the food's the guy's been penny pinching, the food is not that good, the service has fallen off, they've lost servers, things like that. That information will now be updated to reflect that. That was one of the things that they kind of mentioned in that. There's going to be AI for learning. That was another big thing that they had. They're going to be using, again, that learn language model, which is fine tuned for education. It's supposed to be able to help understand, conversationally interact with AI for tutors who need that, students, faculty, and whatnot. And they'll be able to kind of access a range of subject matters that will involve lesson planning, new teaching ideas, content, activity suggestions, quizzes, games, and finding, I think, more interesting is finding subject matter experts. So if you're a teacher and you're trying to teach, I don't know, civics or something like that, it will go out and find experts and bring in that knowledge, either maybe perhaps from books that they've written that they published online, uh, lessons, studies that have been widely viewed, peer reviewed, things like that will all be pulled into this model when you go to search for kind of stuff like that. They broke up a bunch of their Gemini Nano stuff across the board. So that was supposed to be something big that's coming to smartphone devices. But they will have a Gemini Nano Pro, I believe, and a Gemini Nano that will be used to beef up Android spam call detection. It'll be put into Gmail to help kind of process e-commerce returns. So if you have something that you or conversing back and forth with support, like say your Surface broke and you're now talking with Microsoft support team, it will take the emails that it finds in relation to that and help draft up the next email in relations to whatever the conversation is. So if it's, hey, I sent it in, they say that they received it, and then the next steps are when it should be shipped back or what the time and dates are. They can put that in your calendar. The other thing that it will be doing is helping you pre-draft emails, set up schedules, summarizations of emails as well, attachment analyzation, so you can find out, if you need to just search for specific attachments or specific data, it can search through all those attachments and bring them to the forefront. Um, I think the other thing that they had was that oh, there's going to be a new Ask Photos section. This was big as well. This is, I think, took another 10 minutes. Google will be infusing Gemini into Google Photos a little bit more. And so now you'll be able to use longer contextualized sentences to find more specific things in your, you know, vast array of Google Photos. If you have hundreds of thousands of pictures or images or whatever, and you're looking for one specific one, it'll be a lot easier this time around versus typing in, like, right now I look for my daughter, and the best thing I can do is type video, young video, and it'll go back a few years. They're already kids to begin with, so it brings up everything. But now I'll be able to say, hey, find my daughter's first birthday video where she was smashing the cake, and it'll be able to find that exact video and pull it forward versus saying birthday videos, and then I have to kind of do the rest myself. So that's something cool to look forward to. Like I said, the other developer kit that they mentioned was Firebase, which is a Firebase Gen kit. And it leverages Apache 2.0 licenses, so developers will be able to kind of get that right off the bat. And they'll have, again, JavaScript support right at initial launch. It's being tested right now. And then those are the kind of the ones I highlighted. I mean, they talked about Gemini and a bunch of other stuff too, but I'm going to let you get into this because you've been pretty quiet. What are your thoughts on all of this AI?
I've been sitting here and I was quiet for a reason. Um, I was listening to everything you were saying there, and I was looking at the photo we have on screen of the presenter. And I had took a glance down at the Copilot button, and I had actually had a notification pop up on my notification bar in Windows while you were talking about an email I had just received that concerned AI. And it's for something we use on our website or a plugin that we use. Because now you can generate images and you can do this, to help out with your news posts, etc. And I bring this up because I was listening to you going through each section and the new models to come out and do different things, and it's all fantastic. I see three things that bother me. No specific order here. One, how do we pay for all this? Because when you're going through all these, I get the email and I'm looking at what we're going. I think of the subscription model we had for entertainment when everybody was cutting the cord. Oh, cutting the cord! I'm saving $100 a month. I'm saving $150 a month instead of paying the big cable provider or the big satellite provider. Think back. Look at your bill now. Are you still saving that $100 a month? And no, because all these mergers have happened with the content developers, the content services, and we're just paying multiple people that same amount of money instead of paying for just one service now. So I see a bundling thing that's going to happen for this concept, I think, to work, for these companies to buy into the idea of we need AI for our company, because it kind of goes back to the whole EU thing with bundling. I don't see a company paying 5 AI bills. I see a company paying one, maybe two. We've got to figure that out first of all. And then, as you were talking about the video generation, and as Google was showing some of the demos they showed during the I/O conference, I thought about Apple. Yes, Apple, because we had the iPad Pro announcement earlier this week, and we watched Apple's presentation. Apple is all about the content creator for the most part. They're always showing render times in their demos. So when you start adding the idea of being able to generate content, images, video, and otherwise, what does that do to the content creator that's out there making a living creating content? That's how they pay their bills. How do these I don't see it always being a positive is what I'm trying to say. I see some negatives here. I see some copyright issues. I see some creators just sitting down at the prompt, typing, saving, posting, typing, saving, posting. That's what I see. And I'm not sure that all of these models will end up in a positive light. I think most of them will. But I think eventually we're going to get into the copyright issues. And I don't think the EU is done. I think they're going to get in on AI. I think the FTC is going to get in on AI. I think the excuse me, the content side of AI that we see now will not be the same content side that we see even a year from now. Right now, we're just throwing it out: prompt content, prompt content, prompt content. There's going to be some regulation in here that changes how we do that and how we use it.
Yeah, to that point, we'll be talking about our next story, which is about layoffs, actually. This is from last week. Um, like I said, we were gone, so we'll touch up on it quickly. But Microsoft cut a handful of studios and got rid of a lot of employees in the process. Now, uh, if you want to say that there's any credit given, Microsoft did mention that in January that they were going to get rid of 1,900 people. We thought that that would have been a 3 month process and that they would have been done with it. Once they announced it, we didn't hear much about it, so we figured they were quietly going about it. But apparently, the Xbox studios, I think four in specific were closed. And one of them, which was very controversial because it was the studio that created Hi-Fi Rush, which was actually an indie darling for a lot of people. I don't know financially how successful it was, but it was one of the better games exclusives that Microsoft had. And a lot of the statements that have come out since then, laying off all these people and I guess merging a handful of them, was that they said that they wanted to streamline the process and make more creative games, stuff like that, and then they go and fire the small creative team. So it was kind of contradictory. Um, you and I have talked offline that I've given Microsoft a bit of runway to with this, especially with Phil Spencer, and they've seemingly done pretty good. But I feel like moves like this are quickly eroding a lot of that goodwill, and the fact that they don't have much to show for it as of right now is going to hurt them. And the less that they have to show for it, and the longer that time goes, again, they might be building out an amazing array of games that are going to be published pretty soon. Maybe they are going to take all these, rehire some of these people who are let go and merge different studios and create another studio. Who knows? There's a lot that could happen in the future, but without titles, without positive announcements, the longer that this layoff kind of lingers in the air, the less goodwill I believe people are going to have towards any new announcements coming from from Phil Spencer that aren't saying, like, "Hey, here's a new game, and here's all the people employed to make it." What are your thoughts on that? And then we'll move on to the next headline.
Don't like it. Don't like it. Don't like it. And I felt pretty strongly about this. I don't remember which one of us wrote this, but I do remember us talking about it. There was an administrator, somebody in charge of one of the divisions, I do not remember the name, that said they were happy to see this because the studio, the word used was topple over with work. Now, because they wanted to see things shrink and, oh, we're going to focus on less, more focused titles, you know, supposedly the things people want. So Microsoft is valued at what, a multi-billion-dollar company,
Almost a trillion. I
almost a
think they've
trillion.
hit a trillion. Yeah.
Yeah, almost $1 trillion. So a game studio operated by a, let's call it, $1 trillion company is toppling over with work after they just spent $70 million buying one of the biggest game studios in the industry that makes arguably some of the most popular games. I just stopped feeling it right there. I did. I just lost it altogether. I'm like, this, my goodwill right there with this deal just ran out because I'm like, you didn't say this in the FTC. In fact, you were saying other things. You were saying, oh yes, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. You said this in front of the EU, and I think you and I mentioned it on a very old podcast when all this was happening. I bet you once this settles, they start chopping with the axe. What are we doing? We're chopping with the axe. I don't like it. I'm sorry. I don't.
No, and to that point, I believe Nilay Patel over at The Verge had a very good, a succinct way of assessing these new mergers now from going forward. Less about what they're going to do in the future as far as anti-competitiveness and product placement and bundling and all that stuff. Bottom line is, when if and when you buy this company, how many people are you going to lay off? You know that because you've gone through the books. You've seen the overlapping structures, you've seen the overlapping employment histories, things like that. How many people are you going to lay off? How many people do you predict to lay off? And if that number is, I guess, acceptable, then the merger might go through. If it's not, then because again, these studios, they may have laid off those people independently, but Microsoft didn't need to merge with Activision to do it. Is the bottom line. So to your point of goodwill and that stuff, it's Microsoft was saying, like, hey, we're going to make sure that we stay competitive and that everyone has a shot at this in this industry. And then you plan on getting rid of 1,900 people. If you'd have said that during the FTC thing, I'm sure a lot of people in the EU and stuff like that would have said, you know what, hey, hold on a second. Putting these companies together and then firing a bunch of people so that they can't work within these same studios that they've been working at is anti-competitive. That is a aspect of anti-competitive behavior. And the industry shrinking in general, so it's not they're going to find other jobs elsewhere. You're buying up all the other studios they could have gone to. So I think going forward, we should really be following, Nilay's kind of assessment, saying like, hey, you're AT&T and you want to merge with Verizon. How many people are going to be fired?
Bingo.
You're Virgin Airlines and you want to merge with Alaskan Airlines. How many people are going to be fired? And how do you justify that?
And I'm going to go one step further. I know we're not a big, well-followed podcast yet. We're still building our footsteps. But if anybody out there is listening that has worked in the game industry or knows some people that work in the game industry that have gotten fired, laid off, etc., let us know. Put an email out to us social at microsoftunboxed.com. I want to know, are you working? And if you're in the industry and you've been, and you know a group of people that have been laid off, how are those group of people doing? Are they still in the same industry? Have they found employment? Or are they still struggling to pay their bills and feed their families? There's just part of me that wants to know that.
Yeah, we can bring you on and have an interview about this. This is
Yes,
very relevant,
absolutely.
especially in lieu of what Microsoft's done. Move on to our last headline. Kind of like I said, we try to wrap this up. And this might be leading to a lot of that, again, that erosion of goodwill that we were talking about. Is that Microsoft, or at least PlayStation, shipped almost 5 times as many consoles in its Q1 results. So again, the headline basically sums it up, but here's some more details. Is that uh, in Q1 2024 earnings report, Microsoft was down, I believe, around 31% or something like that, as far as hardware revenue was concerned. In that same time, Sony announced that it sold 4.5 million PlayStation 5 consoles, and 20.8 million units in the last fiscal year, missing its, while it missed its 21 million unit projection, it's still 20.8. That's pretty good. The company also sold 59.3 million PS5 units so far, which is quite remarkable considering the launch of the console generation, was plagued by chip shortages coming out of the pandemic or whatnot, or going into the pandemic, coming back out. According to Daniel Mott, the director of research and insights at Nico Partners, the sales gap between PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S, X, and S consoles has widened over the past year. In the thread analyzing Sony's recent earnings reports, the analyst said that the PlayStation 5 shipped 4.5 million units in the last quarter. According to our estimates, that's almost 5 times more than the Xbox Series X and S shipped in the same period. That's that's a 2 to 1, I think, over the lifespan of this console generation, which is very similar to kind of what they had last generation. So I said all that to say you're firing a bunch of people. You are now selling and producing less content. Fortunately, the revenue side, as far as software is concerned, is up because you just acquired Activision and all of their gamers or whatnot. But these are moves that are enduring you to gamers in general. It's showing that people aren't choosing the Xbox console, and at some point they're going to not choose the Xbox software as well. So Microsoft needs to fix something pretty soon. What are you thinking?
You know, one of our fellow podcasters, Brad Sams, put something out the day that this happened, and what he said sticks in my mind because his podcast went of the attitude is Xbox in trouble, and I think IGN and some of the other smaller podcasters like ourselves also put something out on that day as Xbox in trouble, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. You've employed, Phil Spencer has made a few statements. Oh, we're here, we're here, we're here. Xbox is strong. Oh, we're stronger than we've ever been. And we've talked about, does Xbox need to sell the right patent to third party makers, your HPs and your Dells, and say, look, you guys make the hardware, we'll make the software. But when you're looking at a 2 to 1 split, 2 PlayStations for every one Xbox sold, one, that tells me something. That tells me where the consumer is making their choice. Now, we can make the argument that Microsoft is a software company that does other things and Sony is more gamer focused. We can make that argument and have that discussion, and I will agree. But to your point, I'm starting to see some writing on the wall here. I don't think all the business moves are complete. They might be complete for 2024. I don't think they're complete, period. I think Microsoft, not as a company, but the Xbox division is in a place of uncertainty. And I think the gamers have picked up on that. Sony is just sitting over there producing consoles. They're producing their games. Sure, they don't have the ecosystem. I'm a fan of the ecosystem. I like, I use it daily almost. I like Game Pass. I like PC Game Pass. I understand that Sony does not have the depth in the ecosystem that Microsoft does. But putting Call of Duty on Game Pass, as I saw something just a little while earlier by the Wall Street Journal saying that the 2024 version of Call of Duty will be on Game Pass day one, that's only going to do so much for you. So if Microsoft is sitting out there going, yep, we're going to put the Call of Duties on Game Pass and we're just going to take a big swing at Sony when you do, that's only going to do so much for you. That's only going to take you so far. And Microsoft keeping promises, that puts Microsoft in a box. What does Microsoft do for the Call of Duty players on PlayStation? Do they say, well, you don't have a console, so you can go ahead and pay $70? Well, let me tell you, there's enough people on the Sony side of life that don't like what Microsoft is doing right now. They'll pay their $70 to not go pay 400 for an Xbox Series X or $299 for a Xbox Series S. To your point, Microsoft needs to make a move and needs to make a move now, or at least signal what their intentions are.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to put my business hat on because I'm emotional, obviously, about the layoffs and whatnot, and just the state of Xbox in general. But to your point, they are a software company. In they do own the publishing rights to Call of Duty. So the $70 will more than make itself back up for the 1 to 2 deficit console thing. So again, they already have the audience. They already have the PlayStation audience, which is much larger, twice as large as the Xbox one. So for every $70 that they get from one PlayStation person will more than double what the $14 a month that they get from an Xbox console person. So the math is mathing for them on that aspect. I want to say that perhaps, and this is me being generous, this is their Wii U moment where they come back next generation, if there's a next generation, or just a continuation of this generation, with finally that handheld console that will help compete against the Switch or whatnot, or moves gaming from in your living room, a dedicated console that they weren't doing very well in selling, to mobile, the mobile app, the mobile
Mobile store.
experience. Uh, and we've seen Asus, we've seen Lenovo, we've seen Steam kind of come out with these things. They're going to start evolving and becoming thinner and smaller, more portable, with better battery life and more capabilities, depending on the chipsets they're using. Make quieter, run longer. Gaming starts to move from that to this, and it's all done through PC software, which Microsoft has the knowledge and wherewithal. So while Sony is sitting back and kind of coasting on its console stuff, it's just slowly going towards the erosion of console gaming in general that Microsoft is looking for. And in the meantime, it's this weird, awkward, un uh, unappealing transitional phase for them right now. But they will weather it because they are still producing, they still publish the games that make them money now. They don't need to necessarily bank on Halo doing big numbers. They don't need to bank on Gears of War doing big numbers. They can say, you know what, Call of Duty does big numbers by itself. Diablo does big numbers by itself, and now it'll do even bigger numbers on Nintendo, where there are more people than there are Xbox gamers. So we don't need to necessarily worry about hardware. We want to get rid of the concept of hardware, and the fact that our console is selling in such shambles is part of the plan. It's the ugly part that no one, as dedicated gamers like ourselves, aren't really viewing. We're not seeing from a 30,000 foot view. We're just like, hey, I've always done it this way, and you guys are taking that away slowly. Microsoft saying that's the plan. You're going to have much more powerful computers like a Surface Pro, which we'll get into our last topic, that will have the power to do this. All you need is a controller, or you're going to have it on your TV, and all you need is a controller, or you're going to have this handheld device that you can put in your backpack, or plug into your TV to get that same console experience. You no longer need to pay $400 or $500 to just sit at your couch or sit in front of your desktop with this one big heavy device that can't be ported everywhere. So that's my business aspect. We'll see where Microsoft goes with this. We're getting our last topic because this is a very long pod, which is talking about Surface devices and our big event next week. And we're just going to give out, what are your thoughts? Because I've been talking. What are your thoughts on what could happen Monday and the rest of next week?
I'm going to sum it up with a headline that I've seen 4 times. Yes, I'm using a headline number this time. I've seen 4 times since yesterday in various forms. The Mac and PC battle will start Monday. It will be back again. We will do it again.
I don't think it ever left, but we'll at least have new talking points.
Well, I don't think it ever left in the software side of things. I think for the last couple of years, we've had to give Apple the hardware efficiency side of things.
Yes.
And I think, we've had to give that up. And, I'm almost salivating over here to get one of these devices in my hand to see what they can do. And, there's all this talk and everything's been quiet. I know Kareem and I have scoured the internet this week looking for that leak, looking for that YouTube video. The Dell roadmap leaked earlier last week, and there's all kinds of ARM Qualcomm based, devices coming from Dell. We saw yesterday Opera, the popular web browser. Hey, we're ARM compatible. We've seen a few other small pieces of software. Hey, we're now ARM based. I think we're I remember the change, and I know you do too because we're similar in age. I remember when we went from Microsoft or MS-DOS Windows 3.1 to they kind of hid the command prompt. They gave us Windows 95, and everybody went, whoa. Then I remember when the laptops first came into Best Buy and they were reasonably affordable. You didn't go to your Radio Jacks of the world and spend $2,500 to get a consumer device. I think we're in that next phase. I think, in our generation, and I'm saying that the 40 plus generation, we're getting to see 2 revolutions in computing because if everything holds true, we went from what's a computer to, okay, now I need one in my house. Now I need one in every room in my house. Now I need it portable. Now I need it portable, powerful, and efficient. Apple did it on their software. I have my opinions on that. We don't have time for it. But now Microsoft, everybody's been saying Windows on ARM is dead. Windows on ARM is dead. We have said it. Windows on ARM, folks, is alive, well, flourishing, and if they can get consumers to buy into the marketing and it's priced right, Monday may be the start of the new way that we compute.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to put on there.
It is.
I am partially with you on that, but I am of the also mind too to just kind of sit back and say, we're going to finally get the answer about Wintel. Was it Intel's chips?
Yes.
Or was it Windows?
Yes.
There's a reality on Monday, or the subsequent months or weeks when people finally get their hands on these devices that say Intel could go, ha! You guys blamed us for 30 years. It was always the poorly written Windows that ruined our efficiency. Or Microsoft could just said, if we had Qualcomm sooner, this is what you guys could have had. So I'll leave it at that. But there will finally be an answer to the Wintel debate going forward. And it seems like Microsoft is very confident that it was Intel.
They have been very confident.
Yeah, they are not announcing an Intel version of these new devices on Monday. They are only going Qualcomm. We're seeing, like you said, there are other developers like Dell and Lenovo and stuff like that will have their own sets of ARM devices as well. Was it always Intel? Will they be the scapegoat for this next generation, or was it Windows? Windows on ARM has been out there, and it hasn't done what people think it should be able to do. But it's perhaps because Snapdragon had at the time wasn't as powerful, as efficient as Microsoft again wants to be. Or Windows on ARM is just poorly written in garbage as well, and that Monday could be like, nice, a little bit better, but not exactly what we thought. So for those of you who are interested and wondering, we might hop back on for a live kind of follow up, quick rambling of our thoughts on Monday after the event. You guys can go to the website. Otherwise, we'll definitely write about it. Where can people find you in the meantime?
David PHA 1978. That is on Twitter. I saw this morning where the Twitter name is gone. It's now x.com, so I guess I'll call it X for today. And let's see, that's also on Threads, David PHA 1978. Hop over there. Let's have a talk.
Yeah, you can find me at Mindhead1 on Twitter. I will always call it that. He can change it to X, the porn website, all he wants. I'm not following it. You can also find me on Threads. I believe Threads, if you're an insider or a tester, is trying a new format. I think they're taking what TweetDeck did, where you can have multiple columns that are dedicated to different subjects you like. So Threads is developing. It's growing, not as quickly as Twitter, not X. I'm also on Instagram as well under just Kareem Anderson. Again, we want to thank you guys for joining us. This was a bit of a longer one, but we had a lot to talk about and catch up on. We will catch you guys up on all events next week. Go visit the website, MicrosoftUnboxed.com. It's MSFTUnboxed.com for your build information, all the things that kind of come out of that. We will also judge, just like we did Google, how harshly, how they balance AI versus all their other products, because they could go overboard like Google did, and we'll see if Apple also learns from it. Maybe we just have a bunch of boring conferences about AI going into the future. But all that information will be on the website. Again, you can follow us on our social media handles. Well, thank you guys. Get out of here. We're done.
See you guys next week.
Bye. All right. Is that an hour and a half?
It's still going.
It doesn't want to end. It wants to keep this party going. That is interesting.